No, but it is wonderful to have you, Marty, on these topics, because it's I think we're in a period of openness, of open discussion, and learning about different cultures around the globe is so eye-opening, and so important for our ability to move things forward. So thank you so much for coming to talk to us about this today.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. It's good to be back.
Yeah. Hey, Howard.
Hi there. Hello, everyone. Hi, Marty.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good to see you again. Let's see. Make sure I see you all.
Yeah, I know. I've been thinking about updating Zoom, or looking at different ways to use Zoom in this context, because I've been watching a lot of different I guess vlogs and different types of presentations, and sometimes Zoom, it's a little bit of a partridge, what is it, like Partridge Family, or where everybody's in the little boxes across the top. I think there's some other platforms that will do some switching, and that could be easier or more interesting to view, but I'm kind of doing some homework there. We'll see what happens, but I want to make sure that everybody has a great experience out there, and more engaging experience. And so we have to constantly think about upping our game, for sure. Well, we have about 4 more minutes, and then we'll get started. But I know there's just so much to talk about today, and this internationalism and what's going on in the world, and the world is so interesting. I mean, just what's the dynamics that are going on right now. I've been listening to a lot of geopolitics. Peter Zion, which is a YouTube expert on geopolitics, fascinating stuff he comes up with. But just seeing what the world is going through with the war in China and United States and different countries.
Scary.
Yeah, very, very scary, yes. But I'm not sure if the world has been, I mean, there's definitely times where it's been less scary, of course. But there's it seems the innate nature of humans is that they always have to push the envelope in one way or the other. So it's we're pretty strange creatures, for sure.
The United States has definitely gotten stranger over the years. Some ways it seems we're stepping way back in time, that we're not moving forward. We're stuck.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting topic. I just remember in my college days where I was reading about the philosophers, that life back in ancient Greece, and Aristotle and Socrates and so forth, and if you've read some of their work, it's put in the context of what their daily life is, talking about virtue and whether things are innate or not, and that if you just read it, you realize that humanity really hasn't changed all that much. We've gotten a lot more technology, but we have all the same problems that we did like 500 years plus ago, So it's just, in some ways we evolve, in some ways we just don't.
I think now we just have so much access, like you go on social media, what's happening everywhere around the world, whereas before they didn't have that. They were like, I don't know, there's some foreign land somewhere, maybe there's, it's probably like aliens, like, are they out there? Like, it probably felt the same, like, okay, we're in our country, are there other countries, are there other people, like, what's going on the other side of the world? Like, so now it's like we can see, oh, this is like this protesting going on over here, or this or that. So I think it's just a matter of just trying to keep your cortisol low as much as you possibly can, because otherwise you'll go crazy.
Hey Jules, if you've got tricks for that, why don't we do a video and teach each other cortisol lowering tricks?
Yeah.
How do we bring your sanity?
Well, one of the things they say is like stay off social media first thing in the morning, because it's something about like the you're still in like a certain phase in your like sleep pattern, and so anything triggering that like first thing in the morning will spike that cortisol up. And the other thing is coffee. You shouldn't have coffee first thing in the morning, and I'm so guilty of that. I'm like, get it into my veins straight away. So yeah, there's always
Okay, Jules, I want to see a blog on that, okay? Because
okay, perfect. I'll work on it.
yeah, that was part of my problem when you spill a cup of coffee in your bed.
Oh,
Don't
You're triggered by something you saw on social media.
yeah. And then it's like, oh yeah, I got to look at Facebook after I spilled the coffee in my bed. That was a bad idea.
Mhm.
It sounds like a lot of my mornings too. Don't worry.
well, I did for everybody. We're going to get started here just in right now, but I did unlock or open up the chat, so the chat should be open for everybody to. So feel free to jump in there. But let me go ahead and I'm going to bring up our. To get started here, and just give me 1 second. We'll be ready to go.
Thanks everyone who's like hopped on time. This is awesome. We're happy to see you all on here and take notes. Some of you might have already seen our speaker because she was on about, was it like a year ago, Mardi? Like last year?
Yeah, it was January 2022. Yes,
Wow,
January 2022.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
It's wonderful to have you back. All right, it's all you, Jules.
All right. Ooh, pressure's on. All right, everyone. Welcome to the People Strategy Forum. My name is Jules. I'm here to help actually introduce everybody that we have here, because we have a full house today. So it's really exciting. We're bringing back a previous speaker, like I mentioned. So we have Mardi Huiting-Bijleveld, and we're talking all about cross-cultural coaching using the TMA method. So if you've never been to a People Strategy Forum, I know sometimes each week we have some new people, new faces, so welcome, welcome. The goal of the People Strategy Forum, if you are live on Zoom, you can see it's really to engage, energize, and elevate your employees and your company. So we get together every week. We have a panel of awesome hosts as well as a guest speaker, and we cover all sorts of topics. So it's always something different. And you know, as I mentioned, sometimes we bring guest speakers back when they've been really popular, when there's been a demand. So it's ever changing, and it's not just on Zoom. We live stream to different platforms as well. So really encourage you, if you have any questions, feedback throughout today's session or future sessions, always write them into the chat for us, because that's where I hang out and I read all your comments and get those questions answered for you. But we are also available as a podcast. So, you know, if you ever have to just, you know, listen to something in the car, we are available for you there as well. All right, so let me introduce you to everybody else that is here. We have Char, who has been here since the beginning. She has a long background in human resources and working in the corporate world, but she is now an entrepreneur working all around the world, especially out in Mexico. She has founded multiple businesses and is currently working on her next business venture. We have Sumit as well, and he consults. He is a people strategist. He has a lot of expertise when it comes to all facets of human resources, strategy, compensation, talent management, just to name a few areas. And we also have Howard, who works with CompTeam, but he also has a very long background working in corporate, and he is an expert when it comes to everything strategy and compensation. He's all about the compensation softwares and updating companies so that they're working at a more efficient level. And we also have Sam, who is the founder and CEO of CompTeam. He is a global certified compensation consultant. So he helps companies thrive in the areas of talent management and compensation. I'm not sure if Wendy's going to be hopping on, but she joins us quite regularly as well. And that brings me to our lovely guest speaker, who is returning to us. So we're really excited to have her here. But last time she was here, she was tuning in from her home in the Netherlands. And since she spoke with us last time, she actually moved to California, West Coast, best coast, right? So we have, again, Mardi Huiting-Bijleveld, and she is the founder of Valenti Coaching, which she started back in the Netherlands and then restarted when she made her move to the US. So she is an experienced life, career, and leadership coach. She uses the TMA method. She's very experienced with the TMA method. So we're really excited to have her back and just dive into all this, the power of cross-cultural coaching, because we were talking about, moving, and she's found that she is working with more diverse clients being in the US. So let's dive in and get started. Thanks for being back, Mardi.
Yeah, thank you for the great introduction. Thank you for pronouncing my name correct. I really appreciate you preparing that. Perfect. Thank you.
So Mardi, tell us about your journey and your experiences as you moved into the US. You're from the Netherlands.
Yeah, it has definitely been a very interesting 2022 for me. I started January with you guys on this People Strategy Forum. And then I think I maybe not even knew for sure that we're gonna move, because that was really a few weeks before the big move was there. That everything was final with the visa and everything. But yeah, we moved because my husband got a job here in the US, and I've loved him for almost 15 years, so I had to follow. And because of my visa status, I was not sure when I was able to work again, when I was allowed to work. So that was a pretty interesting change, because you're building your career. I built my company, it was going really well, and then you kind of stop it, which felt really weird. And it was also weird to be, when I moved here in the Silicon Valley area, and say you don't work, which is not the norm here. It's not the default. So this year I've learned a lot about, like, what does work mean to me? Like, what does the work I do mean for me? Who am I without having a job and without saying I'm a coach, I have my own company. But it also gave me the opportunity to do a lot of things that I just never took the time for, and was always on this wish list. Maybe you all guys have also a wish list, these things that you say, oh, I would love to, but I never. So I learned how to bake bread. I love bread, and I miss the Dutch bread, so I started making my own. I've learned how to sew. We rebuilt, we converted a camper van, a camper car, and I made my own mattresses, and I made all these things with a sewing machine, and I never touched one before. I learned a little bit of Spanish. Please don't try me, because I'm now in my English head. But I've learned, I started that language a bit. So it was a very interesting year of doing really different things than I did, and really enjoying them. But I started to miss coaching again as well. And luckily I was able to get my work permit again and restart everything. Yeah, so been a cool year.
Well, I think that's a great experience. I mean, I think that, and I know Char knows this, when we put ourselves in these new locations, these new areas, we have a sense of growing and developing, whether or not it's in that culture, or like in your case, I mean, you a lot of hobbies that you brought in that you always wanted to know more about, or something that you discovered, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. And of course, we traveled a lot in this first year, because, I mean, oh my goodness, it's just so beautiful here in the US. There's so much raw nature that you can just drive to and just camp in nature. And then for a day, you just don't see anything else than nature. And for my experience from the Netherlands, which is a small country, 2-hour drive, and you've seen the whole country no, that's not true, but still, you're on the other side of the country. It's been a wonderful experience to see that much raw nature that's really completely nature still.
And look behind you there, you've got every single bird in Northern California. Woohoo! Yeah, because I wake up.
Are you a birder too?
Well, when you wake up in the morning in Mexico and you go, what bird is that? I've never heard that bird before. So even the birds sound different in different parts of the country, huh?
Exactly. Oh, that was so funny. Like the first bird we saw in the backyard was like, oh, I've never seen this bird. And then it was like a combination of two birds back home, but it was completely different. So this was a Christmas gift from friends of ours that know that we really are into birding. Sometimes my husband just gets off the table and just looks outside because there's something he doesn't recognize. And yeah, it's also been a lot of fun to discover all these new species that I just didn't know they existed.
Yes, I love that. I love that when traveling, especially I'm a big fan of going into Texas, because Texas, unfortunately, I don't know the name of the bird, but I just love the bird song that you hear in different areas. And it's just, it makes you feel so, the birds have a way of making you feel at home, no matter where you are. It's an
And they have a
interesting
different
experience.
language. Their language is very different than human language. So, how do animals communicate that way? I don't quite get it.
Right, right. But one thing I know mentioned that what Sumit just said is that there is there. I'm sorry. What did you say, Sumit, about the getting across the city?
In 2 hours, yeah.
Yes. So
Barely do that here.
yeah, which is very important when we think about the different experiences and different parts of the world. And here in the U.S., we have a lot of wide open spaces and a lot of natural beauty and resources and so forth, and so people can move around without regulation. And in other parts of the globe, and it's quite built up, and sometimes you even need permission from the government to relocate in certain locations. And so it's important to kind of know where you're at and understand the constraints that certain societies have overall. And so I know we're talking specifically around cultural differences, but I think that's a significant one, just infrastructure. So Marty, when you moved to the US, what was the big behavioral differences that you experienced among the people that you were interacting with versus Europeans?
The first thing that comes to mind was, I think even on our first day that we arrived, I think in the morning, complete like 9-hour time difference. We were very tired, but we were hungry, so we went to a store, and then we were waiting for a crossroads, and there was this other guy, and he's like, "Hey, how are you?" And he was like asking us that, and so how's your day so far, and how does oh, it's nice weather today, right? So he really made some small talk, and we were like, wow, well, this never happens to us in the Netherlands. People are really to themselves, and they're, especially in the north, I think, well, maybe also in the west, but it's still, they keep to themselves. And here people just make conversation. And it was not only that experience, it was a lot of times I went to grocery shopping, or I was in line somewhere, or I just walked somewhere, and people just start talking to you. And I think that was a really nice change. People are more like, they want to get to know you at least for a little bit. Like they are interested, and that's been a big change. And it's made it a lot easier to make friends, to make connections, because like the first impression is they're open and they're interested. And that's been really fun. Yeah, I think that's the biggest.
I totally agree with that, because I'm very chatty and I'm very talkative, and I haven't given that feedback. I can make friends with anybody anywhere. I talk to the people in the Ubers and the cabs and all over the city, and I have been told that Americans can be pretty chatty.
Yeah.
Yes, at least
But I mean,
yeah.
If you're new, it's really nice that someone is helping you to just share something of their life. So thank you for your chattiness, Char.
Yeah, but here's the deal, is that I am not bilingual, but I am very good at nonverbal and hand gestures and facial expressions. So I can sit and talk with my neighbor, Lapita, who's almost 90 years old, and we can talk for hours. As long as I give her a glass of vino, she's happy.
Yeah.
And I would be interested to hear from you, Jules. I mean, when being an Australian coming to the US, I mean, what was your experience? Was it similar?
Yeah, I was like kind of like agreeing that whole time, because like Aussies are really friendly and outgoing, but I think we're more reserved. Like I feel like Americans are a bit more, they're more confident. They're not afraid to be like, I'm actually good at this, or like they're not really afraid to be different. I feel like in the US, if you are different, if you are unique, if you are trying to be successful or start a business, everyone's like, yeah, that's awesome, like so cool. Like I think we like here it's success or like having big goals and dreams is really supported here versus Australia. We have what's called the tall poppy syndrome, and that's why a lot of us leave because you know, basically the tall poppy syndrome is poppies tend to grow the same way, same height, and there's always like one poppy that just shoots up above everyone else. So that I always kind of struggled with because I did want to travel the world and I did want to move to the US at some point. Like I had these crazy dreams. So people, you know, in Australia, it's kind of like, what, you think you're better than us because you want to do that? And it's like, no, I just want to like make the most out of the short time I have on earth. But and I think too, like Americans definitely want to know your life story. Australia, they're more like, why do you want to know that? Like, that's, you know, why are you in my business? But I think Americans are definitely more open to sharing. And because I come from a Polish family, my parents are from Poland. So when I go there and visit, kind of like what you were saying, Mardi, I think it's like European culture. They're just more reserved. They're not like so, you know, out there. And, you know, you ask a question, they're like, what are you writing a book? Like, or it's very like short answers or like thumbs up. So yeah, it's interesting when you go to different parts of the world. So yeah, I've definitely experienced it firsthand. Yeah, and I would definitely say, I agree that Americans love to chit chat for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I think we have the same. We have another expression, and the meaning is exactly the same. It's like, don't show your head above the grass. Like everybody is in the grass. Don't show your head above the grass because then you're just showing off and you are thinking you're better than anyone. So please just like all remain in the grass. Well, yeah, I think it's the same thing as the puppy one you have in Australia.
So do you guys have a lot of lawnmowers where you're from in the Netherlands? Do you? Seems like in America, we're mowing our lawns every day.
There's some
What was
straight,
your question about the Netherlands?
I said, do you guys have a lot of lawnmowers? Because in America, we're mowing our lawns every day. It's like our lawns have to be perfect every day.
and so the
Thinking like
stereotypical,
smaller cities they do.
yeah, the stereotypical things that we think about America is like the lawn out front with the white picket fence, and you know, has been a common standard for 50 years. But then when we think about a lot of the countries up north, we think about frozen rivers and ice skating and snow skiing and so forth. So, but what it would be really interesting, Mardi, is you mentioned one of your things that you noticed that was different was when you moved from the Netherlands here to the US, you had to rethink about what work means to me. And so can you explain a little bit more about that? What do you mean by that? How did work or the concept of work change?
Yeah, well, a few years back, I made the choice to start my own company because I had a good job. I could stay there for the rest of my life if I would, make a good amount of money, but I wasn't happy there. I knew that people were happy with what I did because I was doing a good job, but it just didn't have anything to do with sharing my heart with the world or doing something that was really from within. And there was a big journey, but coaching, that was something I felt like this is me. This is being who I am and helping someone out from within. I really enjoyed that. So I remember like when I was still doing that other job, I thought, well, because I knew that this move to the US was coming one day. And I thought, well, I don't really care because I don't really care about this job. We can move and I'll just, I don't know, work in a coffee shop or do something else. And the funny thing is when I started doing what I really loved, it started to become harder to move. Because there was not only friends and family that was leaving behind, but it was also something I built. Well, I'm not that business person. It's not about building a big business, but I really enjoyed what I was doing. And it felt weird to start loving that concept of what I do. So then when you moved here, it was a weird experience to not be allowed to work. I think that like I come from the generation that thinks that everything is possible, that it's told that we can do anything in the world if we want to. And then I was not allowed to work. That felt really, it felt weird to not be allowed to do something. But then like later on I was allowed again, and so that moved. But I think what was interesting is people keep asking you from the very beginning if they want to get to know you, like, hey, and at least in the Silicon Valley, the first thing is, hey, what is your name and what do you do? That's like the first question they ask. So you start to think that what you do, that's like who you are, because that's what everybody's talking about. That's what they're interested in. They're not interested in your hobbies or who your loved ones are. They're interested in what do you do. And I knew, like, I work with people and helping develop their talents and figuring out what their values are, and looking at life as a whole and figuring out what part does work have in that. And I thought, like, I'm not attached to work. I'm attached to doing to being a good person. But then if everybody keeps asking, like, what do you do? What do you do? Well, I don't do anything. I do a lot. Like, I came here with 4 suitcases and I have to build a household. So I'm shopping, which is also a fun job, I think. Yeah, but I think that made, like, because the questions came to me, it started like, oh, so am I not good enough if I'm not working? So I started feeling, like, noticing all these thoughts and feelings. But then again, when I started at Stanford again after summer and starting with coaching groups and working with a lot of internationals that made the same move. They made a move from another country because either they had a job opportunity or their husband or other spouse had a job opportunity. And then you see, oh, this is also part of this phase, that you're moving to another part of the world, and your identity gets a question mark behind it, because who are you in this new situation? And then I noticed, so this coaching thing, it's also part of expressing who I am, and it's even if that's if I don't get any money for it, that doesn't really matter, but it's work that I should do in this world.
Yes.
Well, I find this very interesting because I am interested because we do talk about the TMA method a lot. We talk about coaching a lot. I also found myself where I wanted to do work I really purely loved and enjoyed. And Sumit or Howard will know the statistic of the number of, or put you on the spot, gentlemen, but to know the number of statistic of unhappy employees who are punching the time clock and really hate their job. And I'm perceiving, without the scientific analysis, that many people mass exiting their jobs because they want to find what they purely love. And that can even happen mid-career. So Marty, in your coaching, what's your thought about people working in a job and hating it and then trying to change their life, maybe move or find a new job that is really aligned to their talents and their joys and passions? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I have had the lucky position to talk to a lot of people that were like in that transition time or wanting to get into the transition time to they're either like because of a burnout, so literally their body asked them to change, to make a switch, or they felt the courage to call in some help. But what I do know, it's really hard. And I've known this from my own experience as well. It's really hard to change, even if you know what you like, and but especially if you are settled in a certain way, like you are used to a certain income, you have friends that expect a certain, they have expectations, that have their opinion about doing something else. I think that makes it harder. It makes it hard for people to actually take that step. So then I'm very grateful that I can be a part of that journey to help them find that courage to actually make those steps, and also do it in a pace that fits them. Because I've also had clients that they had this idea that because I think, because all these things on social media that they might read when they just wake up, is that you have to do this big change. Like in one time, you just have to click your finger and then just stop your whole job and just start over while there's nothing there yet. And I've also helped people to figure out, is that the way that helps me to really thrive? Does it help to just jump in? Or is that person someone that needs to take it in steps, to take it gradually, to maybe start working a little bit less in the job and start building something before they make that switch? Because I think some people are super courageous and they don't feel a lot of fear and they like that stress. And a lot of people also need to take it gradually to make sure that they don't freeze in that process of doing something they really like.
Well, I have to agree on that, because one of my coaching clients was a project manager with an IT tech firm. And in fact, he felt his 8 employees had a higher competency in IT than even he did. And he was the manager. And as his career coach, he loved art and he loved music and he loved culture. And I asked him to take his time, but he got upset one day and quit just on the spot. So I had to coach him, and now he's super happy. He's actually working with I think it's like an art gallery or an art district, and now he's the project manager, director of that. So it's a little more aligned to his interests and his passions. But yeah, it takes time. It's not something you can just walk into one day and just quit. You really need to have a side gig or something on the side to help you build up to that big transition. So I agree.
Right. So I would like to just back up really quick. I think Marty kind of jumped through something really quickly, and I'd like to give it a little bit more attention. And that's the fact that Stanford University is engaged you to help work with some of their students, right? Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, sure. I'm involved in the Bechtel International Center, and that's a part of Stanford that is there to support the international community that is linked to Stanford. So it might be students, it might be postdocs, might be visiting scholars or professors, and their whole family. Because there's a lot of people not coming alone, but bringing the whole gang, like my husband did. And what I do there is I host a coaching circle. So I'm leading these small groups of 6 people for 2 hours every 2 weeks in series of 5 sessions per group. And I'm hosting like either sessions that are focused on personal development for people that are like family and they are not allowed to work, for example. Or they're happy with what they're doing, but they just want to like focus on their own development. And I'm hosting groups that are more focused on professional development. So there's more a focus on either finding a job if they're a family, or how to work together with your boss, or how to work together in your new lab where you're the only one from another country, for example. So I'm hosting these groups, and it has been for me also, like, because I also made the move, and I think that's always the fun part of coaching. You learn so much by hearing other people's stories. You can learn so much about yourself through that too. And it has been really fun to engage with a much more diverse and culturally diverse group than I was used to in the Netherlands. I work with a lot of different professional groups, like with doctors, technicians, entrepreneurs, more like social jobs. But here it's like culturally different, and that's been a lot of fun. Yeah, and also hard sometimes.
Yeah, I know it's very important work. I mean, well, in the context of how a company looks at this, I know that Howard has experience in this too, because a lot of the Barclays and BlackRock and some of those larger companies are very concerned about when they're bringing a person in from another part of the world, making sure that they're successful in that transition is quite important, because there's a lot of money invested, a lot of time invested, and of course they're a key employee, right? And so part of, they realize that, it's not just the employee success that is important. It's also the entire family, the spouse, especially. There's a lot of times when those movements fail, when somebody's bringing an executive across from another country. It's if that executive spouse is having a hard time in that new area, it can often cause stress in the family and overall failure in the entire transition, right? So it's quite important.
Yeah, I heard before we moved here that about 50% of the postdocs, like scholars that moved here with the partner, they moved back within a year because the partner didn't get a sense of belonging, get a sense of, hey, this is a life I can live. And like in my groups, there have been people that said, well, they moved then a few months before they started the group, and they said, I've been in bed for 3 weeks because I had no clue. And then I saw this and I joined this, and they are now having jobs or doing courses or and not that I'm magical, but it's magical to get a sense of belonging, to know I'm not the only one in the situation. And I think that's I think that's the biggest thing in group coaching, that you find out, hey, I might be struggling a hard time, like for real, but I'm not the only one struggling, and I'm not the only one struggling with these kinds of things. Because it can be like financial stress. It can also be like the careers. I've met a lot of people here that had these really big, they were judges back home. They were architects. They were psychiatrists. They had these, and they love what they did. And then it's a big transition. And to redefine who am I if I'm not doing that job in that country. And it's been a blessing to be part of their journey as well.
Yeah, I think companies have found that, they spend so much time recruiting the individual that they're trying to relocate, let's say, to the States from overseas, but they found that they need to spend an equal amount of time or more time with their families and partners to help them with the transition as well. Because like you said, if you don't do that, the whole relationship could fall apart if the partner and family aren't happy. So it's critical that companies realize that. Yeah.
And for anybody who's out there in a company that brings people in, these spouses are very interesting. They have like they also have this whole life that they leave behind, and memories and stories that they bring. So it's been really fun working with that group too.
So when you I know, Marty, for those that don't know you out there, you are a certified TMA practitioner, and so the TMA method is a great way to get to know your people better, the people that you're working with, and so forth. And so, how have you used the TMA method in your practice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the TMA method, it's an integral talent management like system method. So there's a lot to the TMA that probably you and Char and maybe other people here can tell more about. But I use it as a coach. So in my coaching practice, in coaching individuals that either have like career questions, so they have no idea what they want to do. Then the TMA sometimes is a good starting point to like start with, hey, but what are, like, first back to you, what are your drives in this life? What are your talents? What are your competencies? And then start looking, okay, so where can you thrive, in what kind of job or what kind of company? I've worked with people that are starting, they have a job and they're happy with it. They're like managers, for example, and they're starting a new project or a new management team. And I would help them being a better team or growing in their job based on the lessons that they get from the TMA. So they get insight in, hey, what kind of leader am I, or what kind of teammate am I? What are my strengths in working together, but what are also my pitfalls? And doing that individually, it's been very helpful for them to understand in the same language as all the other colleagues learn to think about their talents, because the TMA is a method that has a great language for talents and competencies and everything. but it's also helped because I'm also certified as a team professional. So I also help teams combining all that information from, hey, what are your strengths, your strengths, your strengths? So what is the strength of this team if this is the team? So maybe the next question would be, who do we need more? Like, who do we need to complement our strengths? Or, hey, what are the pitfalls that we have together that we have to account for if we're moving forward in this certain project, for example? Yeah, so it's been helping people also in their career switches. Like the last few clients I had, they I knew them, but they were like, hey, I'm now in this position and that I have a few job offers and they're all really good. And everybody has an opinion. Everybody knows for me like what I should choose, but I really would like to I like to find out what I think. So they asked me to be a neutral partner, but then I use the TMA to help them make it clear, to clear up. So, hey, how do I match with this offer, with that offer, or what do I have to talk about with this company in order for me to thrive in this position? So it's been a really helpful language system for me. That's kind of how I see the TMA.
So we were just talking, I mean, in the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about a lot of the difference in cultures across the globe and so forth. And I've found that a lot of tools out there are, they just fail as being a one size fits all. So, you know, they just don't translate in certain cultures and so forth. But what makes the TMA method different as a global tool?
Well, I think one of the like, it's the simple thing is it's digital already. Like it's a digital portal that everybody that does a TMA questionnaire, fills it in, can join. So you can work through Zoom. You can work with the TMA method. And one of the nice things is they have different norm groups. So they have norm groups per language, which means that if you would move to the Netherlands, for example, you could be compared to other Dutch people to know, hey, how do I score compared to the people I'm going to work with in the culture I'm going to work with. The same for the US. So for example, I did my own TMA in the Netherlands a few years back, and then recently I redid my TMA in the US, and I was compared with the US norm, and then you see, like, it's not day and night, but there's slight differences, which help to, okay, so if we, like, if everybody's here on the panel today, if we are going to work together in a US company, we can all do the TMA and be compared to this culture, and that helps to really align the insights that you get. I think that's one of the cool things. And then again, there's the TMAs in many different languages available already. Don't ask me the specific number, but it's a lot, I know, which is also nice. So I've worked, for example, with a doctor from Germany, and I discussed with her, so are we going to do this in Dutch or in German? Yeah. Because where are you planning on working? Because it was about her leadership development as a doctor. So we decided, well, we're going to do the Dutch one because she was planning on working here for a long time. So that's the way. That's one of the good things, I think, of this method, that you can use the different norms and different languages.
Yeah, I find that hugely valuable. I mean, as for those out there that know a little bit about me, my wife is French, and so and of course my mother-in-law is completely French, right? So people like oh my gosh, did she just say that? Everybody's heard of the phrase of French people being frank, right? Or very direct. And so there are significant differences of cultures, and also depending on the generations you're talking with and their experiences as they've gone through life. So that's what I love about the TMA method, is the ability to really sample each culture and understand the nuances and differences and how they are looked at differently as in work in a positive psychology way. So that's what I really love about it. So I know there's you mentioned a book that you're currently reading right now or studying upon, and that you use in your coaching. And what's that book called?
I have it here right now. It's The Culture Map. It's by Erin Meyer. I think she's originally from the US, but lived all across the world. And it's someone, recommended it to me, and then another one recommended it, and then I thought, well, two's a charm in this case. And I started reading it, and it's been a blast actually, because she is. I love it that she's very open about the mistakes she made in working with different cultures. And then she's explaining, she did a lot of research on how different cultures differ in all these different areas. Like the TMA, it's a method with 22 different drives that you can get like different talents on. So it's a very detailed one. And I like it about this culture map as well. I think it's 8 skills she mentions. And so I can want to have one example of my own mistake that I learned why that was going wrong because of this book. So one time in one of my coaching circles, I did an exercise, like an icebreaker exercise that I did in the Netherlands for like often. In the Netherlands, it worked perfectly. The exercise is someone starts talking about their week, how their week was, and then as soon as someone else in the group notices something that links to something they experienced, that person raises their hands and starts talking. So the other one shuts their mouth, and then as soon as someone else finds a link in that story, raise their hands, start talking. So it's a very like quick, energetic way of getting to know each other a little bit in a fun way, and see there's a lot of connection there. That's always the idea behind it. But then I did this in this very cultural diverse group with people from Asia and people from South America and Europe. Like it was a very diverse group, and I think you might know what happened. There was only 1 or 2 people that were talking and talking and talking, and there were a lot of people, especially from Asia, they were quiet. They were waiting and waiting, and even when I tried to encourage them and give them opportunity, it was really hard for them to interrupt people. And then I thought, okay, maybe they're still just a bit shy, and that's okay. And well, not everything works well every time. But then I read this book about what is respectful in different cultures, and in mostly Asian cultures, it's the best way how you can respect another person is wait and before you speak, and make sure there's some quietness, like some silence before you speak up, and you wait until someone looks you in the eye and gives you like a nod to start talking. Well, in the Netherlands, it's people they like it if you speak up, if you have an opinion, and to make sure that if you think something, share it, because otherwise I don't know what you're thinking. So I was laughing out loud when I read this in this book, like, that was what's going on there. Yeah.
I love that you share your story. That is fascinating. I think all of us on this panel made various mistakes, myself included, and I do have a tendency to interrupt. So I'm also working on that. I think it would be very fascinating, however, if you do have a diverse company, let's just say Asian, Hispanic, or American, USA, not America, but to actually do the TMA in their own language, and then cross collaborate. Have you done that? Have you actually taken 2 different cultures and used different languages in groups before?
No, not yet with the TMA. No, I did do some exercises with values, for example, like what are your values, but then, and that it was a very interesting conversation because people were asking, so what does this value mean? And then we were and also because not every, like English is everybody's second language in that case. So it's like, but that was also really interesting, like how people view certain values really differently. So I can imagine if you're gonna do it with the TMA with different languages, and you'll have to, like, there must be one language that you work together in, probably, unless you always use a translator. It would be interesting to have a conversation and to, okay, so how do you interpret this specific talent? Like, what would be your definition of having this talent? And then share that amongst different cultures, because I think that would be a very nice way of combining learning about cultural differences and learning about everyone's individual talent, because then you see where your perspective is just different. Well, you have to find each other when you're working. Yeah, so I would be very interested in that.
So in a situation where you're I mean, you mentioned that you use TMA and teaming, and a lot of companies right now are dealing with multiple cultures, multiple diversity situations, where they have, if we just think about this, just looking at our panel here today, I mean, we have, you know, a person from Europe, a person from India, a person from Australia. We have, you know, those that are different religions and so forth. When you're talking to a group like this that is very diverse, how do you find that understand a little bit more about those cultural norms that are specific to them? How do you go through that discovery process?
Erin Meyer also gives a lot of examples of how she does that, and I think I really agree with, like, the general principle. She said, make it, like, talk about it. Make sure that you're gonna discuss what you're experiencing in the collaboration, which again is also for some people from some cultures really difficult to, because it might look like negative feedback that you're giving in a group. So that will need some preparation to make sure that that is also okay, or adjust and make sure people can do like written statements, for example, just to break the ice. Yeah, I like what I did, for example, with these groups at Stanford, is also just asking, so what have you experienced that is like the question you asked me, like behavioral differences from what you're used to, because it's kind of a safe question, because you're not judging, it's just you're stating something that is different than you're used to. So you're also opening up about yourself. You're sharing something about your own culture that other people in your group can learn from. So I think there might be like a few questions you can discuss. And you can also, like I said, you can use written feedback in the beginning to share. So maybe a question like, what is something in your, like a sentence that is often said in your culture, or what should you never say to your boss in your culture? And then just make sure it's anonymous. You get it in a maybe digital platform if you're working online, and trying to figure out, so what reaction is from who, and then you can discuss, so what is the background and what is the context. So I think, yeah, these sessions where you talk to each other and share about what are the differences that you experience and what gives you a hard time, and then, for example, from the culture map or from the TMA, you can get some language, some words that you can start off with to find these differences, and also the things that are the same, because then again, that's what you also see in the TMA, that people also from very different cultures can experience the same, like have the same drives. It's also kind of culturally independent. Yeah,
I know there's probably a ton of great stories there, just in thinking about what people experience. I mean, I was just traveling just yesterday, and often, you know, we have the mobile apps, right, just for the travel if you get your airline ticket on your mobile app. But in this particular situation, I was taking a boat. I had to take a boat, and it was from one island to another. And once again, it was just like the airplane ticket. It had the scan thing that they would scan in front of the boat. And but what's typical in my culture in traveling is that you get this on your phone, and you can just zap it yourself, and you don't have to give it to somebody else. But when I came across this one gentleman, I reached out to zap it in front of him, and he took great offense to that, because that was his zone. That's his expertise. He wanted me to hand him, my phone, and so he could zap it and hand it back to him. So it's just some things are maybe a cultural preference, and some others may be individual preferences. But I think just keeping an open mind. I was apologetic once I saw his offense, but I think a lot of it comes just to being more intuitive with other people, and looking at people in their face, and reading what their expression is, because I think we can see more of one another if we're more self-aware, and if we're more aware of how they're reacting. I think that's quite important. I imagine, Sumit, I would just love to hear just a bit from Sumit's experience in this, and in dealing with different things. What do you think, Sumit?
So the talk of comfort zones and your own space, it brings a lot of funny stories from the Indian context, because we've got 1.4 billion people, so there isn't a lot of space. And typically, like if you're in a queue for something, it could stretch to 50 people or more. And if you start maintaining a one-arm distance or a safe distance among them, it would be 100-meter long queue. And so we don't have the same concept of space that other people do. That's one big difference. And earlier, the conversation around being friendly or being chatty. So that's funny as well, because if you were to smile and say, "Hey, how are you?" in the elevator or on public transport, people would think, "Why is that creepy person talking to me? I don't even know them." But at the same time, it's fairly normal for a stranger to start asking the personal questions like, "Are you married? How much do you earn in a year? What exactly do you do for a living?" And so there's no escaping that once you're in a train or a long bus journey. But I think we're not as chatty as Americans, but we can be, as a country, we can be quite invasive with the kind of questions that we ask, because obviously, I'm sure most of us on this call would agree that asking how much you earn, or whether you're married or not, is not a great line of questioning. But it's a big difference.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. As I'm just looking at the time, and I'm realizing that we've been chatting, and we're just about out of time. So I do want to take a moment real quick to acknowledge our next week's speaker here. And so we're going to be listening to Stephen Wiedner on key interpersonal skills for leaders. And so we've been talking a lot about that today, as far as with Marty, and having that perception, and being reactive to others, and really hearing what other people are saying. And so I think that a lot of this applies to what Stefan's going to be talking to us. So Marty, I would just love to hear, if you had to ask our speaker next week a question, what would that be in the context of having of internationalism? You're thinking of those key interpersonal skills for leaders.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. I might join again. The question for him, I would really love to hear his perspective on his experience in cross-cultural interpersonal skills, and how how important he thinks it would be for also if you're not working that much with people from different cultures. I think even then, like it would have been great to already know all this stuff before I came here. But yeah, so I think like what kind of cross-cultural interpersonal skills would he recommend to leaders and how to develop them? Because I'm now reading a book and that's great. And that's a way I learn. I learned that the TMA, theoretical learning, is my way of learning. But there must be also other ways. If you would have suggestions for doing this. Yeah, because I'm going to join the Stanford Continuous Studies. There's an interpersonal skills class I'm going to do there, 4-day intensive. So that's what I'm going to do as well. But I would love to hear his perspective too.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that, Marty. I love the learning environment, being on campus. So that must be a lot of fun for you being in that environment.
It's a great environment.
Yeah, congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment. Very proud of you.
Thank you.
Well, perfect. Well, if anybody has if our listeners have any questions and would love to engage you more, Marty, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, if they speak Dutch, they can visit my website, because to be honest, that one is still in Dutch. But they can always contact me through a LinkedIn or send me an email. I think my email might be somewhere around here as well. Yeah, they can always contact me and we can chat more about these themes or other kinds of coaching. Be very happy to talk further about that.
Well, Jules, do we have any other questions that are from the chat?
No, not at the moment. So I'm just going to put Marty's email in there. So if anyone wants to reach out to her, they can. But yeah, no questions. So we're all good there. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Marty, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. It was fun to be here again. It's really
Pleasure. And listen to those birds. Listen to those birds. We're going to all have to compare to them and get posters like yours.
Even the pigeons. Even the pigeons.
Even the pigeons. That's going to be your bird, Howard.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And see you
actually, we have your website. So did you want me to just, is your email on there as well? Would it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it will be on the website too, but I see it does seem auto translate. Well, perfect. Then might make some
I think you can translate websites now. I think you can. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I see it there. Thank you for sharing.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, have a great day. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.